The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
All right, here we go. It's a Wednesday, and that means John Adams, brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. Also, Mike Griffith will join us of Dog Nation, and we're going to get into the discussion. Is Georgia one of the best two teams in the SEC? Probably. But are Georgia and Alabama together the two best teams in the SEC? I think that's very debatable. Also, on the program today, we will, as I mentioned, with John Adams, talk about preseason expectations. There were some holes to fill for this Tennessee football team, and they filled them out except one, I would argue. Could the Vols' schedule keep them out of the college football playoff at 10-2? This is something that I kind of laughed at when Caleb brought it up about a week ago. What Tennessee's Achilles heel might be in football IQ. This day in Tennessee sports history coming up as well. And the stat of the day, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. So go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. A big time show today. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm well. Getting a little rest with the off week. Appreciate that. The bags under my eyes aren't quite so pronounced. So we'll go ahead and get to it right now. And it's a column that you can read on offthehooksports.com. Columns going up every morning, every afternoon, and we encourage you to check that out. So let's go ahead and get into it. This sounds a little bit crazy to some, especially those of you that aren't Tennessee fans and your heart's not with Josh Heupel, but those outside of that realm and the SEC realm are welcome to join in, because I think that Josh Heupel is a top 3 coach in the nation. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, so I started to think about this a little bit when I heard an argument made for a certain former Vol head coach that will remain nameless up until we get to that point. But just at face value, let's make this a poll question. Is Josh Heupel a top 3, top 5, or top 10 coach in the nation? Just off face value alone, Caleb, is Josh Heupel a top 3 football coach? And then we'll talk about some of the guys that are also vying for that position. Welcome to the program. Hit like and subscribe. Caleb, I think he is, and I've got a good argument why. What say you, sir?
You know, Dave, I think he is too. And I'm sure you're going to talk about him being able to coach the other side of the ball with defense now, which isn't always common. And I'll leave that to you, because I'm going to come to something that you guys are all going to laugh at me, because y'all know me and I hate doing this and I hate being this person. But I think a big reason he's a top 3 coach is culture. And I think the thing that stood out to me.
Now, for those that are frequent, I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. For those that are frequent listeners and viewers of the program, this is Caleb pulling a little bit of 180, because I've talked about culture, and he's laughed at me because he thinks that's just kind of a gimmicky word that people throw around. And it is when they first get hired. Yes,
exactly. And I usually don't like buying into it, because I think culture is so intangible, and you measure it with, I think culture develops by coaches who are good at their job, and then that comes. I may be wrong with Josh Heupel, and it stood out to me over the weekend with the Oklahoma game, and here's why. It filtered all the way down, and no one let anything slip. Josh Heupel said it's the next game. It's the biggest game because it's the next one. It filtered down to Amari Thomas, which is, we're not winning this for Josh Heupel. We're winning this for Tennessee. That's our job. That's the culture Heupel instilled. But then you saw the end of the game and you saw, you know what? They had the perfect balance of, we know this is just our job. It's another game. But also, Josh, coach, the players you could tell were thinking, coach doesn't have to tell us. We're just going to put in the little extra for him because he deserves that, because we want to do this for him. He didn't ask them to do that for him. He did not make it about him all week. And I actually do believe him, Dave, that he did not say, and you probably know this more than I do, I'm guessing he did not make one comment to the players about his time at Oklahoma, did he, during that time at all?
I think if so, it was 30 seconds or less. I think it was about like the post game, which is 20 seconds or less. So I think if so, he said it was very short. I can tell you that when we spoke with Cooper Mays, the Vol Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee, integrity matters. I can tell you that Cooper was not aware that he was fired as Oklahoma's co-offensive coordinator the Sunday before the game. Now, what happened between that time or not, I'm sure he addressed it to some extent, but I don't think it was the main topic of focus as far as go out there and win because I'm going back home. Now, let's take a look at those that are vying to be the top coach in the nation, okay? Kirby Smart's got to be number one, right? 2
Absolutely.
championships. It's not even close, especially now that Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh are gone. So this is shaking things up considerably to see 2 of what I would say would have been the top 3 coaches move on to the NFL and retirement, respectively. So next, I think it's Kalen DeBoer, and I'm basing this off of what he's done. Kalen DeBoer is now at Alabama, and you have his history of taking Washington to the college football playoff, and they look pretty good so far. So, and I'm going to get to Heupel's accomplishments pre-Tennessee. But, Caleb, I think you would have to place Kalen DeBoer higher than Josh Heupel right now. Do you agree or disagree?
I mean, if you're going just based off resume, yes,
Well,
but
then it's not just based off resume.
it's because of what they're doing right now as a head coach, is what you're saying, too, right?
Right, and you can
Okay.
factor in a little bit of what they're going to do. But right now, you and I can get into the weeds about whether or not Jalen Milroe is a great fit with Kalen DeBoer's offense. But right now, they're looking pretty good.
So this is a power ranking of head coaches, basically.
Well, not really, but as far as who you would hire, how about that? Okay, so it is kind of a power rank. Regardless, Kalen DeBoer, you can disagree. I would argue that given the fact he's taken the team to the college football playoff, that an athletic director would be more apt to call him than, not at Alabama, but at Washington, call him. And now that what he's done at Alabama, I would say that he has to be considered an elite coach. Let's not forget Washington is not a fantastic program, and they made the college football playoff, and that's no small feat. Now, some other names that I'm going to throw out there. Kyle Whittingham at Utah deserves mention as one of the best coaches in the country. However, his teams have lost 4 or more games in the past 3 seasons. So that's a negative.
He does as good of a job as you can do at that program. Is that fair to say?
Yes, but he never takes a bigger program, which makes me think that he doesn't want to compete at a bigger program. He does as good as he can. That's right. But they've lost 4 games
like Gary
or more.
Patterson at TCU.
Yes. Yeah. Gary Patterson loves TCU. His talk is, people talked about him as a possible successor to one of 58 coaches that Tennessee has had and fired. He was never going to leave Texas based off all the sources that I've had. All right. So I take Heupel above Whittingham. Now, Dabo Swinney has 2 national championships, but he's had turnover in his staff since those championships, including Brent Venables to Oklahoma. So right now, I'm taking Heupel over Dabo Swinney. Stop me if you disagree.
I mean, I would hire Heupel over a Dabo Swinney. In a heartbeat. And look, in terms of resume, and Dabo Swinney's going to the College Football Hall of Fame. Dabo Swinney gets a lot of credit, but Dave, Dabo Swinney is the classic case of a program success, half of it has to do with the circumstances of when he took over that program.
Let's put it this way. Clemson would or would not hire Josh Heupel over Dabo Swinney right now if their athletic director was strapped to a lie detector test. Yes or no?
Over Josh Heupel or in general?
They would hire Heupel over Swinney right
Oh,
now.
yes. Yes, they would.
Yeah.
I think they would.
Agreed.
I think
Okay,
they would.
agreed. All right, let's keep going. Florida State's Mike Norvell deserves to be in the conversation, but they're falling apart this year. Do you think that Florida State would take Heupel over Mike Norvell?
God, yeah, they would open the checkbook. They would pay they would pay all of Mike Norvell's buyout to get Heupel.
Oregon's Dan Lanning needs to be in the conversation. By the way, Florida State is 1-3 in Norvell's 5th season as the Seminoles head coach, so we ruled him out. Dan Lanning has received plenty of attention for going 25-5 at Oregon, but he took over a program that was rolling. Now we're going to get into that, which will, of course, take us to Ohio here in just a second. You have to factor in that Josh Heupel took a program that was an absolute dumpster fire, correct?
Correct. If you're an average athletic director, you're hiring Josh Heupel over Dan Lanning. You're not doing it if you're Oregon. You know why? Oregon has had cutting edge offenses for so long. They are desperate to they think that this is their way to win with War Daddies is getting Dan Lanning.
You mean without War Daddies?
No, they think that Dan Lanning will get them the War Daddies from the South.
Well, he's not going to. There's not enough kids that are going to go over to Oregon or Southern California or UCLA from the South. When you say War Daddies, just so everybody knows, we're talking about the 315-pound kids that can move. It's not going to happen. They believe that could happen, and they hope that could happen, but it's not.
They might open up. Oregon might open up the checkbook.
Yeah, but not more so than Tennessee. And all these kids, or at least 75-80% of them.
No, not more so than Tennessee, but maybe more so than Georgia or Alabama or LSU.
Okay, but anyway, point being, would you take Dan Lanning or Josh Heupel?
No, I'd still take Josh Heupel.
Okay, I agree.
Hey now.
All right, let's keep going. So,
and by the way, all of this is based on the fact that Josh Heupel can go toe-to-toe with any of these coaches who are defensive-minded. We saw that over the weekend.
Good point. Texas Steve Sarkisian, bless his heart. I hope everything's fine. But you wouldn't take Sarkisian over Heupel because of the way things went down at Southern California. I hope the drinking problem is all taken care of. We've all had our issues. But if at face value you had to take one of two, you would take, forget about who you like, but you would take Josh Heupel, right?
Yeah, you can't take that risk. It reminds me of about 15 years ago when Josh Hamilton was looking like the best player in baseball for the Rangers, and the Dodgers, I think, had a chance to get him or lock up Matt Kemp. And they're like, we're going to lock up Matt Kemp because as much as we like Josh Hamilton, he had those horrible drug problems in the past. You just can't take the risk of the relapse.
Okay.
If you're choosing between the two.
Agreed. Ryan Day at Ohio State. I think that we're a little bit too tough on him. I think he could potentially win the big one. I think he could potentially be a great coach. But I go back to the argument that he took over a program that was rolling. Josh Heupel has rebuilt the program. That to me is more impressive than Ohio State beating everybody on their schedule except for Michigan recently, and they've lost 3 straight. Who you taking?
I'm taking about 25 coaches over Ryan Day. So, of course, I'm taking Josh Heupel.
I know you're not high on Ryan Day, but I wanted to be really fair to him. Our poll question is, what do we got on the poll question?
So, Josh Heupel is a top 3 coach, top 5 coach, top 10 coach. Man, it's going back and forth between top 3 and top 5 for the plurality, like 40 to 43%, roughly 17 to 20 say top 10.
Now, the coach that truly rivals Josh Heupel for that 3rd spot may rankle your feathers. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. The other coach that is competing with Josh Heupel for a spot on the entire NCAA coaching ladder is Lane Kiffin. That's the other coach you have to suggest. What he's doing at Ole Miss just doesn't get done at Ole Miss. Wake Forest recently bought out of their home and home, and nobody wants to play them. And Ole Miss is now playing nobody. Basically, they played Wake Forest. We'll get to schedules in a second. But I think you and I both believe that already what Josh Heupel's done with less resources at Ole Miss is pretty darn impressive. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, what Lane Kiffin has done at Ole Miss is beyond incredible. And we talk about building a culture, and we think Lane Kiffin has no culture. I think, honestly, the personality of Lane Kiffin makes it conducive to him being the one guy who can cobble a bunch of players from the transfer portal and get them to play together. And, I mean, he's got a unique skill. Now, again, can Lane... Part of this is... Let me ask you this, Dave.
Lay it on me.
Do we still... You say Josh Heupel, a top 3 coach. You're down to hiring him or somebody else. But then you're told Josh Heupel can't bring Rodney Garner and Tim Banks with him.
I'm still hiring Josh Heupel because I think he's brought in guys and elevated guys that were better than I thought. I wasn't crazy about elevating Alec Ablin. I'm not crazy about elevating Joey Halsley when Alex Golish left. However, I've been proven wrong. I think it's been seamless and moved on. So I don't worry so much about Ellerby. I think this offense would pull in, well, I'll take a bigger picture than that. Sure, the offense would get any coach excited because they do run the ball. Any offensive line coach that watched that would see that. However, on the flip side, Josh Heupel has shown he could win. So if he up and went to another school, which he's not going to do, defensive coaches would follow him as well. So no, I don't care if he leaves all by himself, which he wouldn't, or not. I think he would, if he left, he'd bring guys, but he'd bring his staff as well. So no, I don't think it's a package deal. I think that argument held true for Lane Kiffin when he was immature and young in 2009. Had they not had the package deal with Monty and Ed Orgeron and all those guys, I don't think Lane Kiffin gets that job, but I'm not sure who does. But I don't think that argument holds up with Heupel.
Okay, I mean, I'm probably with you. I think he'd find the right guys. What we notice is on the defensive side, on the offensive side, he promotes from with him because it's all his offense. On the defensive side, he goes out and finds guys that fit. I mean, William Inge is turning out to be a heck of a linebackers coach that he hired. So I'm with you. He would find guys if he couldn't get Tim Banks and Rodney Garner. I think what stands out with Heupel, even over Lane Kiffin, though, is Heupel really is. I don't know many coaches that run the offense Heupel runs, Dave, and can win a game the way Heupel won it on Saturday at the same time.
Well, obviously Lincoln Riley couldn't because he couldn't do so at Michigan. And I didn't even include him in my list of coaches that should be considered elite. Should I have?
No. He totally, that was some of the most, he didn't know how to sit on a lead, by the way. I don't know, we're going to get to football IQ later, but yes, Lincoln Riley shouldn't be in there. He mismanaged to get a physical ground and pound game because he didn't know how to adjust when they were playing over the weekend. So he deserves a lot of criticism for that. And people will say, oh, but he did it against LSU. No, guys, Brian Kelly lost that game. Lincoln Riley didn't win it.
Agreed. No, I would agree with that. Hit like and subscribe. Vote on the poll question. And where do we stand on the poll question? We'll get to Mike Griffith of Dog Nation and also John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. But where's our poll question now, Caleb?
Josh Heupel is a top 3 coach, top 5 coach, top 10 coach. Again, vacillating in the about 40 to 43% between top 3 and top 5, keeps flipping, but top 10 is down at 18%.
All right, it's time for Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Lance Hurd is the most important player right now on Tennessee's roster. Why? Because if he comes through, we're going to get into some of the why and why not. He wasn't available against Oklahoma. But Caleb, if he comes through, I firmly believe that Tennessee is a great team if he's 100% healthy the entire season. I don't think he's a special player. We'll get into that. But as far as the most important player, let's not say the MVP. Let's say the MIP, most important player. I think right now is Lance Hurd, because certainly you would not give up a Cooper Mays or a Nico or a Keenan Peely or even a Jamad McCoy for a healthy Lance Hurd. He hasn't proven enough. But Caleb, I believe that right now he's the most important ball, because you know what you're getting out of those other guys. So those to me are known commodities. So is that the MIP? Brought to you by Commercial Bank. Bank on it. He is. Commercial Bank member FDIC. Life made better. Commercial Bank creates positive experiences for every customer every day with better solutions, better technology. Commercial Bank for personal and business. Commercial Bank, life made better. CBTN.com. CBTN.com. Am I wrong?
Okay. Nico Iamaleava is still the MIP. However,
well, no, but we know what we're getting out of him.
He's still the MIP. I don't care. But I'm getting to your point with Lance Hurd. Lance Hurd is the most important lineman. He's your $1 million lineman. And
well, they paid him $1 million.
There you go. He's worth $1 million. And honestly, we don't know all the details of what went on Saturday and why he was at the game. But if there's some NIL issues, pay the man. Pay the man his money. And I'll say this: Lance Hurd is crucial for Tennessee at left tackle. Tennessee is very thin on the offensive line. That is the last spot that they haven't fully upgraded their roster yet. And it is why Heupel showed, going back to our previous segment, Heupel showed a level of maturity that you don't see in a lot of offensive coaches by sitting on that lead on Saturday, because he knew the situation at tackle. You got to get him back.
Caleb, I love you, but there's no question in my mind. And I'm going to tell you why, that he's the MIP, because he is an unknown quantity right now. Those other guys are known quantities. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
All right, here's why he's the MIP. It's the other tackles. I like Dane Davis. As a matter of fact, I think that Lance Hurd's physical ability has been a little overrated by the supposed scouts and analysts when he came from LSU to Tennessee. I don't think he's a particularly fast twitch guy. I don't think he explodes off the line. I think he's a big body, and I think that he can be like a Michael Munoz type. However, is he worth $1 million? Well, certainly not when you can't show up and play against Oklahoma. Dane Davis, I know, struggled on Saturday against Oklahoma. I know Dane Davis struggled, Caleb, but I don't know that Lance Hurd has proven anything that he would be that much better. If he showed up, he's not going to be a fast twitch guy, like I mentioned. I don't think he's nearly as good as his rating, but he's probably better than Dane Davis. No offense to Dane, because he's going to be physically more gifted and he's bigger. I think he's the most important player right now on Tennessee's roster that we don't know about.
Okay.
In other words, I've seen it. Maybe I'm changing the question up on you. I know enough about Nico, I believe, that he's going to be fantastic by the end of the year and is already really good. I do not know enough about Lance Hurd, who can't get on the field, to know that he's much better than Dane Davis. However, I would argue this: Hurd would at least provide some depth, and Tennessee's coaches thought he would be better. So he would, right now you're down to Larry Johnson, and Larry Johnson is not ready to play if John Campbell Jr. can't go. And if they have to go out there with Larry Johnson on any sort of consistent basis at right tackle, guys, it could mean Tennessee not winning 10 games. I hope you don't think that's too strong, Caleb, but I do. I think that If they're playing with Larry Johnson the rest of the year, I believe it's a 9-3 football team, because that means that Dane Davis is in the game at left tackle. That means there's no Lance Hurd. I would say it's a 10-3, a 9-3 football team.
Here's what's more unknown about this, though. Dane Davis and Larry Johnson, they did look really bad on Saturday. There's no sugarcoating that. That was probably the best collection of edge rushers Tennessee's going to face all year, except for maybe Georgia. I don't even think Alabama's that good on the edge. I think Alabama's better than Oklahoma, don't get me wrong. But Dave, come on, let's be fair. Oklahoma's got, at the very least, the best defensive front and a very complex defensive coordinator as head coach. And I think can we at least be fair to them on that front?
No, that's fair, but I don't think that Larry Johnson's ready, regardless.
Okay,
Based on people I've talked to and watching him go out there on Saturday and the lack of confidence that Josh Heupel had in him. So, yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit hard on him, but I just don't think he has the ability to be an elite offensive tackle. Now, Lance Hurd might not either, okay, but let's see. The other thing, if you get Lance Hurd back, Dane Davis is probably, even though he's like 7'8", better suited to play guard. I believe that's where he's better suited to play. You have a utility guy, theoretically, at each position, and you have some, albeit like the kiddie pool, some depth. Caleb, right now, they have no depth. If somebody goes down without Lance Hurd in the lineup, they're in a lot of trouble no matter who they play.
Yes, that's very true. And that was the biggest concern for Tennessee going in. We already knew center was a question, because beyond Cooper Mace, and now we know tackle's a question beyond the two starters. Tennessee's just thin on the line, man. They're just very, very, very thin. And a lot of their own recruits just haven't worked out the way they want them to. If we're going to be honest on this.
No, I agree. I completely agree. Shem Umarov is not there yet. He had an opportunity to Andre Keurig being okay at left guard. Now, as it turns out, I think Keurig's done a fine job this year. However, let's look at Tennessee's depth. Cooper Mays is one of the most important players on the team.
Yeah.
But I've heard incredible things about William Satterwhite physically. He's not going to handle it mentally as well as Cooper. He's not going to be the cool, calm guy that doesn't let you get upset at Florida. Okay? That's a fact. However, physically, maybe he's somewhat close. I'm going to make that argument for a second. And you know that I think Coop's one of the most valuable players on the team. However, I would argue without Lance Hurd that Tennessee could be in worse shape because Davis is great. Campbell tends to get hurt and can't make it through a game. So I could make the argument that Hurd's more important than Cooper, although I don't believe that. I think we're underestimating, even if Lance Hurd's average, how important he is.
Yes, he is important, but no, he's not more important than Cooper, largely because the interior blocking is just more important in this offense than the tackles. Look, Oklahoma's an exception. Dave, for most of the season, tackles can be below average in Tennessee's system. And I know that's crazy to say, but they can afford to be below average in Tennessee's system, except for when they're playing Oklahoma, Georgia, and maybe Alabama. And they just got past one of those teams. So this is where I break from you. If Lance Hurd goes down, I still think 10-2 is almost a lock.
Okay. I disagree because I don't think John Campbell can make it through the season undefeated. I think if Lance Hurd's out from this point forward, and I want to address this too. If Lance Hurd's out moving forward, I think they're a 9-3 team. You think they can still go 10-2? I'm not ruling it out.
I think they're 10-2 if Lance Hurd and John Campbell are out. I don't think the tackles are that important, except for when they play elite edge rushers.
Well,
in this system,
Josh Heupel might argue with you based off his play calling against Oklahoma. Now,
that's an elite set of edge rushers, though. I'm saying outside of those teams, he's not going to work. He's not going to have to call a game like that otherwise.
Okay, well, we'll see. Now, you made reference to this, so let me ask you this: if this does have something to do with NIL money, and we don't know that, but it's a big enough rumor that we're going to address it right now. Please hit like and subscribe if you just jumped on the channel. You would do what with Lance Hurd? You said you'd pay him his money.
I'd negotiate with him. Now, if he's like, I need $1 billion, I want it. What was it in Austin Powers? I want a $1 trillion. Like, yeah, like you negotiate. You say, I'm not just going to open a blank check for you. You have to have some principles. But here's what I will say about running a program, and it is true. I don't believe in sacrificing principles for what you need in a season, because you know this, Dave, you're building a program long term. You can't do that, right? I mean, that's just how things work. If you do it one time, you set yourself down a path that screws you up for the rest of time, don't you?
It's the same way as the reason Alvin Kamara didn't play more, because they paid Jalen Hurd and they were afraid Jalen Hurd would flip on him.
Yeah.
So you can't go down that path or you lose all leverage. I'll say it again. Lance Hurd is the most important player on this team that's an unknown commodity right now. And I think that he ranks right up there with the most important players. Quickly before we get to Mike Griffith.
Yes. And so what I would say is that I'm not on principle against players wanting to renegotiate NIL though in season. So I'm okay with Heupel doing that, because I think that should be a principle he allows, because I think players should be allowed to renegotiate NIL in season. And so I renegotiate with Lance Hurd because of that.
Maybe it's a topic for another day, but I say you show up, and he showed up when, in January?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. That's when your deal's done. You moved in. That's when your deal's done. You especially don't negotiate during the season.
So see, if you believe that principle, then yes, you don't negotiate. Then you don't make an exception for Lance Hurd, because you can't make exceptions on these principles, even if it hurts your season.
Caleb, you have a contract. Would you suddenly negotiate it in the middle of the season?
No, I wouldn't. But at the same time, it's a little bit different. I'm not on a limited time. If you told me I can only work for you for a year and I'm generating a ton of revenue during that year, I might renegotiate mid-season. College football, this isn't the NFL. You have such a window that if you start performing at a higher clip than you were projected to or paid to, it's not like you can come back the next year and ask more money. You might be gone the next year. Nah, man, take your money.
Okay, the guy's making $1 million.
Maybe.
And if he held himself out whatsoever, he needs to be told to hit the bricks.
The only thing better than a crawfish dinner is 5 crawfish dinners. The only thing better than $1 million is 1.5 million. Lance Hurd's knowing his value. And by the way, he's a little banged up.
Well, just for the record, the only thing better than a crawfish dinner is a lobster dinner. And Lance Hurd's not a lobster. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2025 Ford Explorer 4x4 Active, $46,529. 24 Ford Big Bend Bronco 4-door, $40,949. 24 Ford F-150 Super Crew 4x4 STX, $46,214.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
If all the natural beauty around here looks a little fuzzy to you, you may want to consider LASIK vision correction from the Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Now with 2 Sevierville locations to serve you, East Tennessee's best eye care is more convenient than ever.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Caleb, put on the poll question. Caleb Calhoun wants to renegotiate his contract now that the channel is exploding.
That's not the case.
No,
I'm not putting it on the poll question.
Put that on the poll question. You say Lance Hurd should be able to just renegotiate his contract during the season. Go ahead and put that up there. Put that up there. We bring in Mike Griffith of Dog Nation. I'm so used to saying Mike Griffith of the Knoxville News Sentinel that I almost slipped up there. Mike with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Dog Nation. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. Caleb, I got to tell you, I've sat in that chair. And let me tell you, Hook is the best at getting you right in the ribs, man. I love it. It's so much fun working with him. I never knew what to expect, but I knew I'd be laughing out loud at some point. And at other points, I'd be like, oh, man, because he'd get me. So it's so much fun to be here with you guys today. It's such an exciting football. Now football really feels like it's here. We're getting into some relevant contests, and we're finding out about the identity of some of these teams.
I agree. They're going to have to do something about the preseason that they've basically gotten, which is the first couple of weeks. Hey, Mike, before we get to, I want to ask you if Georgia and Alabama are the two best teams in the SEC, because certainly ESPN and ABC wants that to be the case. So we're hearing it. But first, we were talking about a specific player in Lance Hurd that may or may not be renegotiating his NIL contract during the season, may or may not have shown up at the Oklahoma game. If that were the case, and we don't know that, but if any player did that, which I'm sure they've done, would you negotiate with them because they have a limited window of time in which they can make that money? Or would you be like me and say, hit the bricks, it's the middle of the season?
Well, here we are, unintended consequence of the NIL again, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, these players just need to get a little bit of money for their name, image, and likeness, right? But listen, I'm not picking on football players. If you did it to sports writers, we'd be the same way. You did it to any group of people, right? So let's not pick on a student athlete because this is happening to them. This is a dynamic that we've never seen before. And I think it's happening all over to different degrees. I mean, remember the Orange Bowl? I think that was a clean-cut example of one team that was bought in and one team that had checked out. And 63-3 later, Florida State still broke. So these are unintended consequences, and it's going to be very important how you manage that. Now, I know that Georgia's had guys leave because they wanted more money. See ya. I mean, they've got a structure in place for these guys for the most part, and their base NIL pay. It's preset. This is the way it is. You're in or you're out. So I think Dave's right. I don't think Tennessee can negotiate without infecting the locker room.
What do you think about that there, Caleb?
Yeah, I think y'all are both just wrong. I think that the principle, I think you would only infect the locker room if you make exceptions on your principle. And if your principle is a player can negotiate his value and you say that up front to players, let him do it. Because everybody's talking about, why should players renegotiate? Well, you know what? What about the other way? No one's asking why didn't Tyrone. No one's saying, well, that's just the way it is. When Tyrone Proto broke his ankle after doing so much for Alabama and got his career ruined and didn't walk away with a dime. Same with Marcus Lattimore at South Carolina. So
wait a minute, Dave.
There he goes. Yes,
you need to teach Grasshopper better. These are some bad arguments, Caleb. Yes, you negotiate, but you have a window to negotiate. And if you extend that window into the season, that's a huge distraction. So you negotiate from season to season. And oh, by the way, what happened to actually proving yourself before you get paid? Now, I love Hook, but I guarantee you he didn't start out at the salary that he's making now.
$8 an hour, capped at 30 hours a week is what it was.
Right? So the time to negotiate is before the season. You've negotiated your value to that point. Now you go out and prove to your program what you're worth. Okay. This isn't the NFL. This is still the college ranks, and you're still getting an education and you're still gaining experience and working your way up the depth chart when you come in. Right. So let's dig a little deeper here than you should negotiate. And as for what happens when he breaks his leg, have you ever heard of Lloyd's of London? It's a purchase you make before the season based on your value. If you were going to be a great player, you can get a multi-million-dollar policy. And listen, I'm sure at some point you played football just like Dave did and I did. When you put the pads on, you know what you're doing? You're not going out there to, play on a trampoline by yourself. You're going to get hit, man. There's risks that come with this, Caleb. So you can't take this pity party route that, oh, well, he's got to get what he can. Does that mean holding up an entire team and locker room? Does that mean putting a fan base in suspense and alienating these same people that paid money, donated for you to be here, built these facilities? You really think that a kid should do that, Caleb?
If you got the leverage, it's not the same as the NFL.
If you got the leverage, if you got the bomb, should you blow up the world or hold the world for ransom?
Hold on.
I mean, my gosh, you're going to take this world over? He's not in politics.
What I'm saying, Mike, is that
I don't know who's in charge right now.
What I'm saying is that it's not like the NFL. You're right. You're on you're on very limited time to make your money. And so it's not like you could say, well, I'll prove myself this season and come back next season. You may not have a next season. Because, again, you could be a senior. You could be looking to go to the NFL the next year. Get your money now. Get it. Nobody else cares. And everybody else involved in football is allowed to go get their money immediately. Coaches can flirt with other jobs every single year to get bigger contracts.
I'm feeling a generational argument being made here. Is this a generational thing?
I don't know. Let's talk football. The poll question is up, brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. Go to hdknoxville.com. The poll question is this: Caleb wants to renegotiate his contract. ? Yes, defeat his gambling problem. No, he's a good person. Right now, Caleb, where do we stand?
Let's see. 70%, 73%. Yes, defeat his gambling problem.
All right. By the way, all super chats, if you want to throw it in there, it's not go to me. It goes to Caleb's 3-month-old son, Quincy. His college fund, and it will be put away so his gambling problem can't affect that. All right. So let's go ahead and get to
going back to alcohol.
Yeah, going back to all right. Let's get a statement out there that I think that my buddy Mike Griffith is going to disagree with.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
I think most people would say what the H to this based off recent history. But I'm going to say it right now, and I do believe it because I think I got the numbers on my side. Georgia and Alabama are not the two best teams in the SEC. Mike, you've covered Alabama. You're at Georgia. You agree or disagree with that statement?
I think you could make the argument that neither one of them are in the top two teams in the SEC right now.
Wow.
I think Texas has looked phenomenal, even with their backup quarterback, Arch Manning. How's that for a backup quarterback? Good Lord. I don't know what he's eating down there. Have you seen how much that guy's grown? I mean, he went from being pencil thin to looking like he's Heisman already. Texas is phenomenal. They look good on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I have questions about their dynamics on the perimeter. I don't think they matched last year's. Talking to people down there, I think there's questions about Quinn Ewers' ability to stay healthy. But right now, they look like the best team. Now, you could make the argument for Tennessee after last Saturday night because we've known all about Josh Heupel's offense. Apparently, Oklahoma forgot at some point. They paid for that. But defensively is what impressed me. Now, I know Oklahoma's offense isn't supposed to be good. Whatever. Still Oklahoma. How bad are they going to be? I think Tennessee looks really good too. Now, if Nico were a little more experienced, I might even put him over Texas, but he still holds the ball every now and then. Ball security. He's going to play better teams that are going to get to him faster. He's going to have to accelerate, take another step for Tennessee to perhaps win a championship this year. So in Georgia, we're kind of relying on, Kirby will get it done because he always has. And you saw the star ratings on these guys, and we've seen flashes in the second half against Clemson. But you could make that argument for that 2-3 spot if you're Tennessee. So I think, who knows, this could ultimately be a play-in game for the playoff. I'm not sure that if Georgia loses, that they couldn't lose another one, and maybe not play in the SEC title game. Or if Alabama loses, maybe they could lose 2 or 3 this season. So this could have future implications. Well, it will have future implications to some extent on the college football playoff. But I'm saying even beyond that, we might look back at this game and say, boy, the winner of that game was the last SEC team to get into the 12-team playoff field.
Yeah. So, Mike, I wanted to dive in on a couple. I actually want to dive in on Alabama more because Georgia, I know they struggled with Kentucky 2 weeks ago, but I feel like they've been doing this for 3 years where when they're playing a lesser team, they're like, we'll turn it on. We'll go win the game when we need to win the game. Alabama, I said that Jalen Milroe would not be a fit for Kalen DeBoer's offense. I've been proven wrong so far. But have I been proven wrong in the sense of Jalen Milroe's first read and run, being able to torch people on the ground, proves me wrong? Or is it that he's just played a lot of slow defenses to this point?
I think the competition levels is definitely a factor. I also think Ryan Williams is a factor. When you got a guy like that, holy cow, that Alabama receiver, and he's only 17 years old. Yeah, he's been a big factor for Jalen Milroe as much as Kalen DeBoer, just like Michael Penix was a big factor for Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is living the good life. Let's face it. Yes. It gets, and to be fair, he brought Penix with him from Indiana. And if we're going to go back even further, he went to Indiana because Tennessee pulled a scholarship because what's that head coach's name up at Western Kentucky, the offensive coordinator?
The one who was Tyson Helton?
Yeah, Helton, right. Because I'll never forget Jeremy telling me, Coach Helton says we're doing this kid a favor. He can't play in our offense. Nobody managed to do pretty good at Washington, and now he's with – but reeling it back in, Dave, I just feel like that Milroe is the intangible. He was last year. They won the SEC championship game because Jalen Milroe made plays and Carson Beck did not.
Yep, that's pretty hard to argue with. Let me ask you this. As far as the rankings that you would have them, and then I want to get into more of a preview of the game and how you see it shaking out, in particular the Georgia-Alabama game. But if you had to rank with gun to your head who you think the top 4 or 5 teams will be at the end of the season when the college football playoff is taking a peek at these teams, not where they are necessarily right now, but who will be how will the rankings shake out?
Okay, well, we actually do a poll in the AJC, so I actually have my SEC rankings right here.
Oh, sweet. All right.
I have Texas number 1.
Okay.
Georgia 2, Tennessee 3, Alabama 4, Ole Miss 5, LSU 6, and I got a soft spot for Sam Pittman. I got Arkansas 7 and Missouri 8.
Okay, so what you have Tennessee higher than most? Why?
Well, actually, more people in this poll of writers from the Southeast have Tennessee higher than Alabama because they've looked more impressive, because they're more proven. And I'll throw out the NC State game, sure. But look, at the time it was a top 25 matchup and there was an environment to manage. Let's give Tennessee credit. They played well. It's not their fault that NC State's who knows what's going on over there. But Tennessee's win at Oklahoma, that was a big game environment. Alabama's win at Wisconsin was, $5 ice cream cones and people leaving. Their backup quarterback couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
Jump Around was playing though,
which by the way is completely overrated. Haven't been to that stadium, completely overrated. But anyway, I don't know that Alabama's really been tested. Whereas I felt like that was a test for, Brent Venables. I watched him outcoach Georgia. Georgia won the game in 2021 in Charlotte on a pick 6. But Brent Venables and that Clemson staff outcoached Georgia in 2021. Brent Venables is a very, very good coach. And that environment was a tough one. So I think it's an easy argument to this point that Tennessee's been better than Alabama.
All right, let me ask you this. Keys to the game. Everybody will be watching the Georgia-Alabama game, and it's early in the week, so if you don't have a pick, I understand. But what will you be keeping an eye on?
Georgia's ability to run the ball. If Georgia can run the ball, that's what's going to turn loose, Carson to throw the ball deeper downfield. Otherwise, they're going to play a high percentage field position game. I think that's pretty familiar to a lot of Tennessee fans. We've seen that before with really talented Tennessee teams under Fulmer. They're going to try to just wear you down. They're going to try to pound you. They're going to try to stay on the field. They're going to try to flip the field. They're going to use their special teams. Georgia may have the best special teams in the country. They're going to try to use their special teams and their consistency on offense to wear you down, and then defensively they're not giving up the big play. Not only is this a team that has a touchdown scored on them, they're the only team left in the nation, but they don't give up big plays. And so the chess match is this: can Georgia run the ball effectively and keep Milroe off the field? Conversely, can Alabama hit the big plays downfield? Because I don't think they're going to be able to piece together long touchdown drives. If that makes sense.
Does. Mike, you're golden. How do people follow your work?
At Mike Griffith 32 on Twitter, ajc.com or dognation.com.
All right, buddy. We'll see.
Let's
Go ahead, go.
Sorry, I just wanted to address the poll question before we go, because guys, the poll question up here says are Alabama and Georgia the top 2 teams in the SEC? Yes. Georgia is, Alabama isn't. Alabama is, Georgia isn't. Neither are top 2. The plurality says Georgia is, Alabama isn't. Second is neither are top 2.
All right. So if you had to go with that, if you had to vote on that poll question, Mike.
I'm going to give Georgia the edge over Tennessee to this point. And obviously that's going to, it could change Saturday night. Tennessee's idle, of course. But right now I'm keeping Georgia over Tennessee only because of Nico's inexperience. He's dynamic. He's brilliant. I bet every team in the nation would trade for this guy in terms of what he brings for the next 2 or 3 years, perhaps, maybe a Heisman Trophy. I mean, this guy is the real deal. But he's still a little inexperienced, and he hasn't maybe been tested in terms of having to maybe come from behind in a really difficult situation. I think Heupel's done an unbelievable job of protecting him. That's the only factor right now. And if Georgia wins, then obviously they distance themselves a little bit. But Tennessee's right there. I mean, they're in the top 3 in the league easily.
All right, buddy. Have a blessed day. We'll talk to you soon, and I'll give you a shout, and I'm going to get Caleb a lozenge. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. He is awesome. Mike Griffith does a great job. Again, I would follow him on the Twitter and beyond. We appreciate Mike for making some time. Does it surprise you at all that Tennessee is considered by a lot of people, according to the AJC, and I haven't seen that poll, so I'm taking Mike's word for it, that Tennessee is, by some people, thought to be the 2nd or 3rd best team to Texas and arguably Georgia right now?
No, it doesn't, largely because I think people are genuinely, me and you aren't, but Saturday was the first time that what we have been saying about Tennessee's defense was on display for the national media to see. And I think they dismissed it with NC State. They're still kind of dismissing it with Oklahoma, but it's part of this is the 3 top 25 teams Tennessee's played dating back to the Citrus Bowl last year are the 3 worst offensive top 25 teams, I think, ever, honestly. But that's still 3 top 25 teams that they shut down with their defense. So that's where I think that's coming from.
There you go. Mike's appearance brought to you in part by our good friend Medicare Misty. Insurance you need, options to choose from, agents you can trust, and Medicare Misty does not charge for her services. MedicareMisty.com. Again, MedicareMisty.com. This day in Tennessee sports history in 1 minute.
I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
John Adams scheduled to join us in just a bit. We'll see, because I talked to John yesterday about the topics we were going to discuss on the show today. Please hit like and subscribe. By the way, any super chats go to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. That's Caleb's 3-month-old son. And John's supposed to join us, but John said this. Well, I got the, my garage door, has to be worked on. I said, you know what time? He said, you know how that goes. So we think, excuse me, Caleb, John is going to join us as I'm choking up as I scarf down some eggs during the break. Caleb, this day in Tennessee sports history, but first, give us an update on the poll question.
Yeah, so is Georgia, or Alabama and Georgia, the top two teams in the SEC? Leading the way is Georgia is, Alabama isn't. That's 40%. Second at 33%, neither are in the top two. Third at 24%, yes, they are. And fourth with 2%, Alabama is, but Georgia isn't. I want to know the person who says Alabama is a top two team and Georgia isn't in the SEC.
Maybe an Alabama fan. We bring in all kinds. This day in...
I don't think Alabama fans think that.
This day in Tennessee sports history. Well, they hope that. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our good friends who happen to have my vehicle right now, as I've had some vehicle issues recently. I know I'm well taken care of at Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com, qualitytirepros.com. I want to take just a second. If you are in the Chattanooga area, how nice it is, because I've had 3 cars out of 4, including my kids, break down, literally a phone call this morning within the past week. So it's nice to know that I have a place to go, and you do too if you're in the Chattanooga area with Quality Tire Pros. And I mean that with all sincerity. Tell Bo that I said hello and support our sponsors. That's why we're here. This day in Tennessee sports history, Caleb, is?
So on this day in 1938, that would be 86 years ago, Tennessee opened the season with a 26-3 win over Sewanee. That began an 11-0 season where they went 7-0 in the SEC, and it was their first SEC championship season, the first year that they ever made a bowl, which they beat Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl that year, and the second undefeated season in school history.
Nice. Okay, that's good stuff. Let's
kicked off the golden age of General Nealon's era.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Let's bring in John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel right now. And John, I certainly appreciate the time. That is a beautiful color of sweater you have there. What would that be called? Fuchsia?
Not at all, Dave. And it's not a sweater. It's just a pullover. I would say peach.
Cool. When does your wife Melinda get it back?
Funny that you say that. It actually was hers.
You're kidding me.
Good call.
All right. Here we go. The poll question. Caleb, ask John the poll question.
John, we got a poll question up, and it is, are Alabama and Georgia the top 2 teams in the SEC? And the answers are yes, Georgia is, Alabama isn't. Alabama is, Georgia isn't, and neither are in the top 2. Leading the way right now is Georgia is, Alabama isn't, but neither are in the top 2 is second.
Yeah, it's hard to go against Georgia, but right now I would say neither one of these teams is in the top 2. I think the top three teams are Texas, Tennessee, and Ole Miss.
Well, let's get to 4 downs. John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. 4 downs is all about Tennessee's preseason expectations. Have they been met?
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, let's go ahead and get this thing rolling with Caleb Calhoun. Caleb, in the preseason, what would you say were the biggest question marks heading into the year for Tennessee?
I would say it was going to be running back, offensive line depth, and secondary would have been the top 3 biggest questions facing the team.
Okay, John, what would you add to that list? Because I know you have another one that's pretty pertinent.
Yeah, in preseason, certainly the secondary was the main thing. I also was I wondered about the linebacking core, how good it would be. And certainly I agree with Caleb on the running backs and O-line, running back depth an issue. The other one, I guess, would be quarterback because of the drop-off between from Nico to the backups.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get to those right now. Cooper's going to set us up, and you're not referring to. You mean Gaston Moore, which we don't have a drop from, but we're working on that.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Perfect. Coop, what down?
Coop here. First down.
Let's start with Nico and the quarterback position. First of all, we all 3 were on board that we thought Nico would be very good. So that hasn't surprised any of us. But our question would have been, what if Nico goes down? We've now seen Gaston Moore. So if you want to address Nico's play, particularly on Saturday night, John, and then Gaston Moore, what you've seen of him in the backup quarterback position, if they had to go to that route, what do you think?
Well, as far as Nico, I mean, I think at the end of the year, he'll be considered the best pro prospect in the country among quarterbacks. However, in that Oklahoma game, the way that turf was, it was a bit concerning to me. Guys were slipping, and I didn't think Nico had his footing as well as he normally does. When I was watching him run, maybe I was reading more into that than was there, but that's what popped into my head when it was happening. So I wondered about him making cuts and stuff on that turf. As far as Gaston Moore goes, yeah, he played against 3 vastly overmatched opponents, rather. NC State was overrated too. But I like the way he handled the offense. He threw a couple of touchdown passes. He's really better than I thought he was. I'm not saying Tennessee could beat any elite teams with him at quarterback, but the way the defense is playing, other than Alabama and Georgia, with Gaston Moore at quarterback, I still think Tennessee would have a shot at winning those games. And that, to me, is more than I would have expected in preseason.
Okay. Fair enough. Coop, what down?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right. Second down is this. Let's just include the back 7 altogether. Linebackers and the secondary. Has that been answered, in your opinion, to the point that Tennessee is a true national championship competitor?
Yeah, I think so, Dave. The linebackers, I really like Keenan Peely. He's been, I don't know, it seems like he covers more ground than I thought he might. Arian Carter is playing well. And then you have players in the secondary that are making plays. So Jermod McCoy has been really good, I think. So they've helped themselves with transfers. I didn't think the secondary needed to be great. It just needed to be an upgrade over what it's had. So coupled with how good the defensive front has been, I think Tennessee's okay in the back 7 now.
Okay. Caleb, let's get a third down.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right, so John, we've talked the secondary, the quarterback play. I want to ask you what I brought up, which was something Dave brought up yesterday too, which is running back depth, because we do believe in Dylan Sampson, but nobody else has really emerged. And I don't know if Deshaun Bishop can go through a whole SEC season You tell me what you think.
I really am surprised by how well Deshaun Bishop has played. He was kind of a blank slate to me. Really impressed with him against Oklahoma, as I was Dylan Thompson, because those were tough yards they were getting in that game. First 3 games, I mean, they're getting into the secondary behind that offensive line. But I really liked what I saw from Deshaun Bishop. I mean, I think he carried the ball maybe 16 times, something like that. Held up well. You still need more depth there, but the depth is ahead of what I thought it would be because I didn't know. I wasn't sure about the number 2 guy because Cam Seldon has had injury issues. I didn't know how good it would be for backup. I'm not concerned about the backup now. If those guys both stay healthy, Tennessee has no worries at running back.
Well, that's always a huge if in football at any position. Sure. I think you would agree with that. But it's even a bigger if you play as a lineman. And Tennessee has already been banged up on the offensive line. That leads us to
all SEC center Cooper Mays here, 4th down.
All right, John, your thoughts on Tennessee's offensive line depth. Caleb and I discussed it earlier. He's a little bit higher in the backups that he saw. Basically, Larry Johnson's who we're talking about. But your thoughts on who stepped in there, and is the offensive line depth Tennessee's Achilles heel? I'll go ahead and go on record. I believe it is. If something goes wrong there, that could sideline their season.
Yeah, I think it is their big Achilles heel. But one thing that anytime you discuss a weakness now with Tennessee, whatever that area might be, I feel better about it because of the way the defensive front has been so dominant. I think Tennessee can have flaws, shortcomings, whatever you want to call them, and overcome those now because of positions of strength. The O-line, in that second quarter against Oklahoma, when Lance Hurd didn't play, offensive left tackle, and then John Campbell went out with an injury, right tackle. You saw what Josh Heupel did. He just all of a sudden, he changed his strategy. He said, we've got to be conservative here. We can't put Nico harm's way. We can stop Oklahoma. We just don't want to hand the Sooners anything. And so he became very conservative. And I think part of that was because he didn't think Tennessee's offensive tackles could handle that pass rush. Now, maybe they'll get better as the season goes along. However, I still think that's an issue of concern. You look at compared to Tennessee's defensive front, where they play 12 guys and they just keep rotating players in there. Those guys are always fresh. I don't see any drop off. I mean, they were bringing in guys. I was having to check the press guide and say, now, who is this? Beyond the 2 deep. So but it's entirely different on the offensive line. And if you look at Oklahoma's offensive line, and that, talk about an Achilles heel. I mean, that Oklahoma is in big trouble there because of injuries. Could Tennessee withstand the kind of injuries Oklahoma suffered in the offensive line? It would be tough. I mean, it would be tough for anybody. So that, to me, is a concern. And maybe the Vols can develop depth and feel better about that later in the year.
So, Caleb, I want you to jump in here. But I wanted to mention something you said. You said you had to check the roster. So Larry Johnson won your Bobby Graham Award because that is the only, and it's a Memphis guy, right, Caleb? So you'll
No, he's not a Memphis guy. He just beat Memphis made the catch against Memphis.
Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, he made the catch against Memphis, and that's the only guy when I was covering Tennessee full time that I really honestly had to check the roster to know who that was. I did not know who he was when he caught that ball against Memphis. So, John, I don't know if you remember that, but I think we're sitting there.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Everybody said, and these are people that are paid decent money, not really good money because they're journalists, but they're paid decent money to know everybody on the roster. And we all simultaneously said, Who's that? All right, Caleb.
Okay, John, I wanted to play off this a little bit because I think that I'm with you with how Heupel got conservative. And I just wanted you, before we get to our next topic, to quickly address the legions of fans that are upset with Josh Heupel getting conservative, because I thought it was brilliant, particularly when Oklahoma's offense isn't moving the ball and you don't want to risk a strip sack and you could get a 3-score lead.
Yeah. That was I was surprised by that. I didn't really think about it. I'm working, I'm writing on deadline. I'm thinking, I wonder what the fans will think. However, my wife is watching the game with me, and she overreacts to everything. If Tennessee goes 3 and out on one series, she says, that's it. We're doomed. We'll lose. It's over. Why am I even investing emotion in this team? That's all it takes. So she became very irate over how conservative Tennessee was being. And my emails followed that line of thinking. I thought it was maybe Josh Heupel's best coaching job on game day, because that goes completely against what he believes in. He believes in piling up the points, piling up the yards, and a relentless up-tempo, high-scoring approach. And we've seen it in the past. We saw it in 2022. And kind of with the mindset that Tennessee is just going to outscore you. You might give up something, but Tennessee can outscore you. And yet Heupel resisted that temptation. It had to be hard after Nico hit a couple of those deep slants, hit the receivers in stride, one for a touchdown to Dante Thornton, the other to Brew McCoy. Big gains, looked really good doing it. Man, he flipped a switch. Josh Heupel did, and said, if we want to win this game, we got to be conservative, slow down the tempo, and took care of the ball and protected Nico. That's another factor in that. I think it's really important with coaches, we call them offensive gurus, to see how they evolve as a coach. They're not the offensive coordinator anymore. They're not the star play caller. They're not just that. They're also the head coach. They got to manage the whole thing and think big picture. And you're right, Caleb. I thought he did a terrific job with that. I think it kind of speaks to how the fans have become spoiled on offense. Is if they think Tennessee can score 50 points against anybody. Well, it couldn't against Oklahoma. There was no way that was happening. It's not against Georgia. It did it once against Alabama. But there are going to be games when you go for a championship, you got to win games like that.
Yeah, all Tennessee's offense could have done differently was lose the game, considering the offensive tackles that were there. I mean, that's all they could have done differently. John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. Why the Vols' schedule, which I've griped about, could cost them a shot at the college football playoff.
25th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2018 Ford Mustang convertible, $24,550, 2023 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, $29,789, 2022 Ford Escape SEL all-wheel drive, $26,975. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
John Adams' appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. Welcome back to the program. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksandjones.com. Other lawyers say that they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle and settle for less. Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. John, I would have said before the season that Tennessee at 10-2 is definitely going to make the college football playoff. And in fact, I picked them to go 10-2 and make the college football playoff and at least win a game. However, as you pointed out in a column, and I didn't read it, you and I discussed it, and then I thought it was interesting, so I wrote about it myself, and people can read John's or mine on Off the Hook Sports, compare, contrast, and see who's the better columnist. It's John. But, John, I do see a way that Tennessee could get left out at 10-2, and I can't imagine the uproar in Knoxville if that were to happen.
Yeah, first of all, don't put yourself down like that as a columnist, Dave. I remember you finished 4th or 5th in the state last year.
Second.
In column, right? Yes, whatever. Nobody remembers after first.
You're not first, you're last.
Yeah. I thought the same thing. 10-2 in the SEC gets you in the playoff. And the chances are it still could. But the way Tennessee's schedule is unfolded, if it's matched up, if that becomes a tiebreaker at 10-2, the strength of schedule is not as good as I thought it would be. The non-conference schedule was a joke aside from NC State, but now NC State is a joke. So Clemson just poured it on against NC State. I don't know if NC State is favored, but I don't know if it can beat Northern Illinois. I mean, I don't know if it can beat anybody in the ACC. It's been a big disappointment. So non-conference strength of schedule is awful.
John, how much will? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
How do you weigh these two things, though? And I'm with you. Non-conference strength of schedule is awful, and there can be 10-2 teams left out. And I want to just point out our poll question before I ask you the question. Right now, the poll question: could Tennessee miss the college football playoff at 10-2? Yes, schedule is way too easy. 17%. No, 10-win SEC teams always belong at 83%. So they disagree with us. But John, I mostly agree with you. My question to you is, though, could Tennessee's brand outweigh the strength of schedule, just the desire to put them in for ratings?
Yeah, and John, can I piggyback off that first? I made the argument in my column that Neyland Stadium being a home game would be something. Listen, television's in charge of all this. They can put the college football playoff committee on it if they want to, but short of God being on it, television's going to tell them what to do. So I think Neyland Stadium helps. And John, I wonder how much we should thank Pilot for keeping it upright.
Well, that may be a factor. The way Tennessee's playing right now, I don't think it will be an issue because I think Tennessee's going 11-1 now. I think they'll split with Georgia or Alabama and finish 11-1, play for the SEC championship in Atlanta. But yeah, at 10-2, you just don't know how the race could could play out. We're talking right off the top about Georgia, Alabama. If it turns out that, say, Texas and Ole Miss prove to be better than those teams, that Tennessee doesn't play them. What if Missouri beats Alabama? I'm doing hypothetical stuff here. I just think there could be a situation arise, and it would be very unusual. And I think your poll has it right. 83% think Tennessee gets in at 10-2, and I do too. But I just think I thought it was no question in preseason. I can see a little bit of a question.
Well, and it's a curious college football playoff committee. I would have thought, no question, that when you play head-to-head, you'd be ranked ahead of somebody. But that didn't happen in 2022 with Tennessee and Alabama. So there's precedence for them to do quirky things.
Yeah, I know. And here's what bothers me about the selection committee is it's as though it applies different standards to different teams. So let's say it's got Tennessee and Alabama. It doesn't use head-to-head. And then it has Florida State and Kansas State. And it applies strength of schedule. I mean, it applies head-to-head for them. I've seen that in the past with 4 teams. And I noticed it particularly last year. The criteria seemed to change as to what they were trying to judge. And you would like to take, in the fairest of worlds, Tennessee's TV ratings, Neyland Stadium, such a great venue. And what a story Tennessee has become. It's one of the better stories in college football. We saw that with Josh Heupel going back to Oklahoma. That really shouldn't be a factor in who makes the playoffs.
Well, it shouldn't, but you and I both know if let's say Northern Illinois was 9 in their minds and Tennessee was 8, or vice versa, they're going to make Tennessee a home game. I think
Sure.
we both know that. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Caleb, I want you to jump in. I do want to remind everyone that portions of the program are brought to you by our friends at the Hemp House. The Hemp House is absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to tell you why, because you know what you're getting. There's a lot of stuff out there that you shouldn't trust. With the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Caleb?
John, I don't want to. I don't want to act like this is the selection committee's like sitting in a smoke-filled room doing evil laughs with like their plans on who to put in or not put in. But
I do.
Dave brings up one point, another one that I want to point out when we talk about 10-2 SEC teams versus 10-2 Big Ten teams, or anybody else. Regardless of schedule strength, do you think the SEC's new contract with ESPN and the college football playoff being on ESPN could have an impact on if it's 50-50 or 55-45 leaning to the SEC team?
Well, you have to be pretty cynical to think that, and I'm pretty cynical. So, yeah. I kind of have to recur. Well, I know the example we always use here is the Peyton Manning thing in 1997 when Peyton didn't get the Heisman Trophy.
Mm-hmm.
The ESPN wasn't carrying the SEC then. It wasn't its main carrier. If it were now and you had the same situation, Peyton Manning would win the Heisman Trophy. Same record, same teams, same player, same Charles Woodson in Michigan, all that stuff being the same. ESPN pushed that agenda as much as anything I've ever seen. And now it's not in its best interest to push a competitive network, and that's what it's doing when it's pushing the Big Ten. It's different. The SEC is the favored; they're the favored conference now, and I think a lot of times SEC fans think of themselves as the underdog. They always think that the networks and everybody outside here is screwing them over. It's not that way anymore. they're the ones that are benefiting from their status and their connections.
Yeah, and I think that Caleb and I have discussed this before, but I think that goes back to one of the reasons that they took less money from ESPN and the television contract. But portions of the program brought to you by Peak IV Hydration, South Knoxville and Sevierville. Wide range of IV treatments designed to help you feel your best. And here's the cool part. You can order their patches online. If we can put that link in the chat, I'd appreciate that. PeakIVHydration.com, PeakIVHydration.com. They've got the energy patches that I've done, the vitamins and mineral patches as well, and you're going to feel fantastic. I can assure you of that. John, John, as far as Tennessee's Achilles, sorry, Caleb, were we staying on this? I'm a little confused here. I got to turn.
No, we can move on. We can move on to the Achilles heel.
Okay, cool. Tennessee's Achilles heel is what, John?
Right now, I'd say depth in the offensive line, and that's not a really bad Achilles heel. When you're talking about depth, and I would have said that. I wouldn't have hesitated. I would have said secondary preseason. I don't think that anymore.
So, John, I'll get to the depth of the offensive line. I know you say you don't think that with the secondary, and I partially agree with Jamal McCoy, who's an amazing corner, but how much is it that the secondary has improved, or the front seven is just so good, life's a lot easier for the secondary now?
Oh, yeah, that's a big factor in it, Caleb. I think when I look at it now and evaluate it, I look at the whole defensive unit. I don't just say it doesn't matter why the secondary is better, I guess is how I look at it. It is better. So this secondary with that defensive front, I'm okay with that. And those linebackers, I'm okay with all that. I just think that defensive front is overwhelming teams and will continue to do so. So, yeah, that's my reasoning on it. And also you could say, well, Tennessee hasn't faced a great quarterback if you want to judge the secondary. But those quarterbacks, on the other hand, still have to go up against that defensive front.
John, I'm going to play the other side of this. And I agree with you. The offensive line depth is the biggest concern. But other than Jermod McCoy, I can look at him with my eyeballs and tell you that he's an NFL player. I don't have to look at Pro Football Focus's grades or all that. I can tell you that he's the best defensive back Tennessee's had since Alontae Taylor, and perhaps better. We'll see. But I don't feel confident in them yet because of the quarterbacks they played that have been knocked around. I think a team, maybe Georgia, keeps two tight ends in, which they're apt to use a lot of tight ends over their recent history, and protect Stetson Bennett. And then the DBs could look very susceptible. I may be wrong, but you seem more certain about the DBs than me, and I'm curious why.
Again, I think it's playing better than I thought it would, given the circumstances. The circumstances are it has a great defensive front protecting it. So you go back, Will Brooks, the walk-on. I mean, he made a game-turning play against NC State. I mean, and that basically started the stampede with his interception return for touchdown. I think he's third or fourth leading tackler on the defense now. I didn't think he would be that good. So it's better overall. And you bring up Georgia. That's an interesting point. Georgia does not have the receivers. It's got Carson Beck at quarterback, but I don't know that it has the receivers to exploit Tennessee's secondary like some teams in the past have. And that's why I kind of think, in a way, Alabama just matching up, home field advantage aside, Alabama might be more of a threat to Tennessee secondary because it's got the receivers. Ryan Williams, instant star as a freshman. So, yeah. But we've been through this for several years now with the defense, with the secondary, and you just can't. You talk about how good McCoy's played. Well, Tennessee didn't have anybody playing that well in the secondary before. So if everybody else were the same, it's not. But if everybody else were the same, it would still be better just by having McCoy at a corner. So I think that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, John, I agree with you. I want to go to the offensive line, back to it for a second, because we all agree offensive line depth's a concern. We saw how bad the tackles were on Saturday without Lance Hurd and John Campbell. Is it fair to say, though, that they won't look that bad all year if they have to go to their backups? Because as bad as Oklahoma is offensively, we can safely say they have maybe one of the best. They're top 5, and they have one of the top 5 pass rushers in college football, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was one of the problems I had with the fan reaction to that game. Yeah, Oklahoma has offensive troubles, mainly because of injuries. That's a big factor in it. But they've got some big-time players on that defense, all over the defense, in the secondary, at linebacker, in the defensive front. So, yeah, they were challenged. There will be other – I'm looking down the schedule, certainly Alabama and Georgia. But other than those teams, who would be as good defensively is Oklahoma, and who would put as much pressure on backup offensive linemen as Oklahoma? I don't think anybody would.
Yeah, I totally
agree. I
agree.
tend to agree with that. John, I find it interesting that you mentioned Keenan Pili, and let's talk for a second about that back seven, because I believe that Tennessee may have, and we're talking specifically about the secondary. We don't know if they've been really tested yet. However, the linebackers have. And I love Keenan Pili. I love Arian Carter. I know they just have 2 of them because they run this, star position, whatever they call it. But I'm not sure that Tennessee doesn't have 2 of the best linebackers in the SEC. Am I wrong?
I wouldn't say that right off the top of my head. I mean, I know Georgia is always stacked at linebacker. But, I mean, based on what we've seen, it certainly answers the questions that I had in preseason. It's hard for me to say. I mean, Ole Miss has some good linebackers. I haven't sat and watched an entire game for Ole Miss, so it's kind of hard for me to say that. Oklahoma certainly has good linebackers, so it's hard for me to say that. But yeah, it's not like it's one of the worst. It's like at the very least, it middle of the pack at linebackers. And you're right, it may be one of the best.
And Caleb, with an edge rusher like James Pierce, I mean, in some ways we would have considered him a linebacker years ago, or a defensive end. I don't know how you factor that in, but Tennessee's second level is, I think, elite.
Yeah, I agree. Well, their second level is elite at linebacker and then at cornerback specifically.
I consider cornerback third level. I consider that the secondary.
Oh! I thought you meant like they're okay. Yeah, yes, their second level alone is elite. I mean, by the way, we didn't see much of Jeremiah Thielander over the weekend from my memory, but I mean, he's still a reliable third linebacker. And funny, my brother was talking to me over the weekend. He lives in Memphis, and Elijah Herring, who transferred out, he said Memphis is having the same issue with Elijah Herring that Tennessee had, which is just the lateral quickness, can't move sideline to sideline, and the upgrade is so very clear now at that position with Keenan Pili back.
John, how important is it to open your hips as a linebacker? Because Elijah Herring can't do it. He can't flip his hips. You used to make fun of me for hips, but they've got Keenan Pili, who you mentioned, is way faster, and I noticed that in the first game, sideline to sideline. Arian Carter, I've been told, is a student of the game. I think he has all the athletic ability. I've talked to guys around the program that are very, very high on him. I think they've got two playmakers. And Peely may be the most surprising player in his ability. I kind of had him visualized as a Mike Singletary type, just playing in between the tackles.
Jeez. Yeah, if you could be Mike Singletary between the tackles, you wouldn't have to go outside the tackles.
I meant that kind of player. So Mike Singletary, who played for the Bears, for the young ones out there, was the guy who just played the run in between the tackles. Ray Lewis, however, was a middle linebacker that had lateral quickness. So I'm not comparing him to either one of those, but the style he plays, to me, is more Ray Lewis-like than Mike Singletary.
Well, the main thing I like about Peely is his toughness. And if you watch, I was watching BYU Saturday. It reminds me, BYU, whether it's really good, not that good, mediocre, whatever, its teams are usually physical. There's a tendency, because it played in the Mountain West for so long, you think of those teams as just high-scoring, offensive-minded teams. But BYU has always been a tough-minded, physical team, sometimes hit you a little late. But Keenan Peely certainly reminds me of a BYU linebacker, and I mean that as a compliment. And Dave, why don't you call up one of your high school coaching buddies and have that discussion about hips? Okay.
Yeah, hips. I've talked to college coaching buddies and NFL coaching buddies about hips.
Or you could just call up his fellow hookers and ask about hips.
That's right. By the way,
down on the corner. Okay.
Let's reset the poll question, if you don't mind, Caleb, or at least share some info as far as where we are. So give me the question, but don't necessarily give me the answer quite yet. What is the question?
I'm most worried about Tennessee's. And
Blank.
are you blank?
Right. Okay. So, and it's offensive line or anything else. We remind you that you can join Hooker's Corner. The QR code is right there. If you're a member of Hooker's Corner, you're eligible to be a paid member. You're eligible to win our weekly prizes, which include T-shirts and books. We'll give those away on Thursday. And then our fantastic prizes brought to you by the Sports Treasures, which is a Pick Six, 6 signed glossy photos by that defensive backfield. And that's brought to you by our good friends at Sports Treasures. Sports Treasures, over 5 million Sports Treasures. Yes, that's a lot of Sports Treasures. Follow them in Facebook at Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN. I share them all the time on our Off the Hook Sports Facebook account. They're awesome. Over 5 million Sports Treasures. Your home in North Knoxville for anything sports, not just Tennessee. So check them out. And that brings us to, if you want to just be a free member of Hooker's Corner, where you get more access to me and Caleb Calhoun, and increased recruiting coverage, and the ability to win fantastic prizes, then you can just be a free member and you'll be eligible for Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge. With Rick Terry, he's got the fire opals that are awesome. Certainly a Tennessee tradition, but Rick Terry also nice enough to provide a Garmin. So once we hit 8,000 subscribers in our Grade 8 Garmin Challenge, as long as you're even a free member of Hooker's Corner, you will be eligible for a Garmin watch worth over $1,000. That's right. When we hit 8,000, if you're subscribed to this channel and even a free member of Hooker's Corner, you will be eligible. So that's pretty awesome. That Garmin watch, again, brought to you by Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design. And I've known Rick for a long time. And whether it's work on your current jewelry or looking for something new, they want to be your jeweler, and they have that affordable game day jewelry like the fire opals. All right, John. So I think it's time for Caleb's favorite portion of the show each week, and that's is it time for Coaching IQ or Coach's IQ, Caleb, where you get to make fun of an incredibly brilliant group of people that I think are college football coaches. And I don't like the fact that you two seemingly like to make fun of them, because there's a lot of pressure on them. It's not as if they're financially independent for life. So Caleb, let's get to our coaching IQ question, and we will determine some coaches that might not be the brightest. And we'll go ahead and get to that right now, Caleb.
You suck.
All right, Caleb, who's number one?
I actually had a lot of fun this weekend because there was just so many mistakes. I had to cut a few out. So I'm going to give an honorable mention to Fran Brown in Syracuse, who on a 4th and 9 decided to do a 3-man rush with 3 spies at linebacker and then single cover all the receivers on the outside.
Yeah, that's good.
The CIA would approve of the spies, but nothing else was good.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So we'll start with the former Tennessee defensive coordinator, Justin Wilcox. If y'all watched that Cal-Florida State game over the weekend, they were in the red zone. It was 14-9. There was a minute left, and Cal gets sacked. A 4th and 16 comes up, and Justin Wilcox burns one of his 3 timeouts to talk about the 4th and 16. So when they don't get the 4th down, Florida State's able to run out the clock.
You suck, you jackass.
John, thoughts?
Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe we ought to come up with a deserved punishment, depending on the severity of the stupidity. I mean, is waterboarding appropriate for Justin Wilcox, or should we hang him from the ceiling? What? I don't know. I'm just thinking.
Probably fire him eventually.
How about fire, prison, or death penalty?
Wow. Seems strong. John?
Ooh, I really hate the idea of getting my skin burned. Fire. What? Say those again.
No, I mean, should they just be fired? Should they go to prison, or should they get the death penalty?
Firing. You got to torture before you fire because you're giving them $20 million. I mean, so no, that goes without saying. They need to be tortured, but I just trying to think of how much.
All right, Caleb, who's next?
All right, so this is one of my favorite ones. Matt Rule at Nebraska, who I actually think is good at running a program and not bad schematically, but I swear his in-game decisions are just hilariously bad. Against Illinois over the weekend on a Friday night, guys, y'all missed this, but Nebraska had the chance to get the ball back with a chance to get a game-winning field goal. But Matt Rule let Illinois run 20 seconds off the clock and then called a timeout to wait to get the ball back.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah. And you know what? That's something that I see so often. It's like the coaches say, oh my gosh. I mean, that should be the Les Miles Memorial Trophy should go to mistakes like that. And it's funny you say that because Blake Totmeyer, my colleague on our SEC Unfiltered podcast, and I were talking about the Florida job. And I thought Matt Rule is somebody I would consider for the Florida job when they get around to firing Billy Napier. I think he's done a really nice job everywhere he's been in college. But after what you were saying, Blake texted me and said, how about Bielema for the Florida job?
What is he up to nowadays?
Illinois. He's in Illinois.
He's coaching Illinois. He's got an unbeaten team.
Yeah.
I know. And I'm telling you, man, if you look across the sidelines and you're getting out coached by Brett Bielema, you suck.
You suck. Yeah, jackass.
So I got
Don't we all think that Lane Kiffin's getting that job, John?
Yeah, it's an obvious choice, but maybe Lane will just say no.
All right, Caleb.
All right, so we got to go to Mike Gundy, and I saw some 2005 former Randy Sanders level of quarterback management on Saturday, where Mike Gundy, his quarterback who started all last year and started all throughout this year so far, Alan Bowman, because of one bad half, he benched him against Utah, and he brought in this guy, Garrett Rangel, threw 11 passes with him over 3 drives, and then brought Bowman back into the game to the end. And I'm thinking, and now Bowman actually brought him back and they almost won. I'm like, maybe if you had kept Bowman in for those 3 drives, you could have actually won the game against Utah.
Garrett Rangel.
Yeah, I would have a problem bringing him in because of his name. I don't know anything about his ability. But See, I look at that the other way, though, Caleb. I'm watching that Notre Dame, Texas A&M game when Mike Elko just kept trotting Connor Wegman out there series after series, one horrible pass after another. I'm kind of on Gundy's side on this one. I'm not going to go just let this quarterback drive me to defeat. I'm going to at least try something different because they were losing that game. So,
but Alan Bowman wasn't really the reason they were losing that game. It's because they couldn't run the ball. And Alan Bowman wasn't like Connor Wegman, who had barely started. He had played well all of last year. And I don't know. It was just, I don't think you bench a quarterback in the middle of the game just to bring him back in later.
Okay.
Well, I think.
Go ahead, John.
Well, Oklahoma, I thought, gave up on Josh Heupel in the Tennessee game. I could understand why. It didn't bring him back in, but it stuck with the freshman. So that's kind of a tough call. Sometimes, Caleb, I think you so enjoy criticizing coaches that you probably overextend yourself and you're just such a harsh critic. And I don't want to sympathize with coaches. God knows I don't want to sympathize with them, but I think you were maybe a little harsh on Gundy on that one.
Okay, set the poll question. Does Caleb hold secret disdain for college football coaches?
Mike Gundy is a man, guys.
Well, you bring that up, and because of that speech, I hold Mike Gundy in such high esteem that whatever frailties he might have on the sidelines, I still think, man, that was an awesome speech. I'm 40. I'm a man.
Hey, let's hit one closer to home, if you don't mind. I thought that pulling Jackson Arnold when they did was absolutely idiotic. And I can't believe that hasn't been a bigger topic of conversation. Maybe it is in Norman, but that certainly helped Tennessee. First of all, what's he supposed to do when they call that bizarro throw out to his left that ended up being ruled a lateral that wasn't a lateral, in my opinion, that should have been an incomplete pass? I just think you come into that game either planning to start. Is it Michael Jenkins? Michael
Hawkins.
Is
you either come into that game planning to start Michael Hawkins, you have a package for him or something, but in the middle of such a big game to pull Jackson Arnold that early, and Hawkins may be their future, John, but I got to give him Brent Venables a big.
You suck. Yes.
I thought that was horrible.
Well,
am I the only one that thinks that was terrible?
Well, I watched Oklahoma in its other games, and Jackson Arnold was making mistakes. He wasn't protecting the football well, and I think that's what scared Oklahoma to death. Plus, Jackson Arnold, though, in his other games, his running ability had saved him behind that porous offensive line. And I think Brent Venables realized, yeah, he's a good runner. He can scramble, but not against these guys. That defensive front is just too menacing. He can't get away from those guys. Michael Hawkins, maybe he can, and he did do a better job. So I don't fault him for that. I did think when he brought him into the game was odd, the situation when he brought him in.
It looked like to me a very good coordinator that was ready to be a head coach, or may never be ready to be a head coach. That was my take. If I were Oklahoma's administration, I'd be in serious concern because that looked like a knee-jerk decision.
Well, I'm sure Oklahoma fans aren't thinking that.
John,
we got two more, and then we only got one more of these left.
You suck.
So let's pick between the two. Give John both of them, and John, you choose who gets the Les Miles Award for dumbest coaching move.
Okay, so one was Lincoln Riley at USC at Michigan. They're holding a 24-20 lead. Michigan has only thrown for 32 yards in the game, and USC has a running back averaging 7.5 yards a carry, and he throws it twice when they have the ball up with less than 4 minutes to go. That was ridiculous. And the other one is obviously number one for me is Dave Aranda's defense. How do you give up 2 Hail Marys I mean, that's just insane.
In a season or a career. Much
Back-to-back plays.
Much less in a game. I'm just going to go ahead and steal that from you, John. He gets it.
You suck.
I mean, there are coaches that haven't given up, that have coached 20 years and haven't given up 2 Hail Marys in their
back-to-back plays.
Yeah.
Baylor, admittedly, as much college football as I watched, I have not watched Dave Aranda's Baylor Bears. What game was that, Caleb? I need to see that.
Colorado, Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, they won. And it was one of those where if it was the final play, and on a final play, you either drop everybody back or you bring the house, right? One of the two. He rushed 5, and I'm like, why are you rushing 5? Like, either rush like 8 or drop 10 back, but don't rush 5.
Yeah, no.
Jeez, that's sad.
John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. John, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, probably in retrospect, I should probably apologize to Caleb for saying he was too harsh on a coach.
Really?
That kind of goes against my inner critic. I've been accused of that in the past. So no, I apologize, Caleb. You go ahead and just bring the hammer whenever you want to whomever you want.
There's a poll question up. Does Caleb have too much disdain for coaches? 55% are saying no right now, but 45% say yes. I do have too much disdain, apparently.
Yeah, Deion
said no. No, you don't. No.
Yeah, speaking of dumb coaches, Deion said that the media is now jealous of athletes because they're making all of that money. And that's affecting the way that they cover that team. John, there's a million reasons why that's absurd. But listen, if you're a jealous type of person, wouldn't you just be jealous that you lost the gene lottery and that you're not an elite athlete? I mean, that's enough to me. And then I've got the work ethic to take advantage of it. I mean, if you're jealous of athletes now because they made money, you should have been jealous of athletes years ago when they were superstars that didn't make money.
Well, I'm sure Deion is probably jealous of guys who can really coach.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what's going to happen? The Cowboys are tanking, and they're going to hire Deion and draft his son, Shedeur. Yeah. I know. I don't want it to happen. I'm just telling you, that's what's going to happen.
Then there needs to be an intervention with Jerry Jones. Family needs to gather around him.
What, a senility intervention? Can you do that? Is that allowed by law?
I hope not. Melinda might be thinking along those lines.
Well, speaking of intelligence, did y'all see Barry Switzer featured in Saturday's game? And of course, Barry Switzer was eating a burger.
I know, just like he was eating a hot dog on the sidelines of the Pro Bowl. I'm like, come on. I mean, come on.
I like Barry Switzer, man.
I don't. All right, John. Great job. Thank you, sir. At the News Sentinel. And where else?
KnoxNews.com.
Thank you. You do a great job. Thank you, John. John Adams of the News Sentinel. Coming up, the last look. We saved the best for last. Like and subscribe. Be sure and turn that notification button on because we got something special coming up this week that I've been working on for a long time. We also have Cooper Mays coming up a little bit later in the program. Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn is just 2 minutes away.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vols collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford & Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2025 Ford Explorer 4x4 Active, $46,529. 24 Ford Big Bend Bronco 4-door, $40,949. 24 Ford F-150 Super Crew 4x4 STX, $46,214.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
If all the natural beauty around here looks a little fuzzy to you, you may want to consider LASIK vision correction from the Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Now with 2 Sevierville locations to serve you, East Tennessee's best eye care is more convenient than ever.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Sorry we haven't gotten to the chat as often. It's just been a busy show. There's a discussion. Anybody worried about Nico's bird legs? And then Les says Nico had a sure first down, but he slid down a yard short. I know you don't want an injury, but don't make him like Joe last year. Joe not running hurt Tennessee last year. I'm not worried about Nico and his size and the fact he's a little taller. I mean, he's eventually going to settle around 245 pounds and be able to run. I think he's going to be eventually like a Josh Allen type. Not that he'll be better, I think, in the long run than Josh Allen, depending on where he goes in the NFL, which is a crapshoot. But Caleb, let's put that on the poll. Does Nico still look too frail? And while I discussed that, I'll get your take on it on the message board. I haven't had that thought this year so far. And we'll get to the stat of the day here momentarily, but I want to get your thoughts on that. The UPS store in Hardin Valley, they're there to help individuals and small businesses by offering a wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated and conveniently located 10629 Hardin Valley Road. The link is right down below, so certainly check them out. We would appreciate that if you would do so. And so what's our poll question right now, Caleb?
It's, does Nico Iamaleava still look too frail? No, 58%. Yes, 42%. I think it's just kind of, sometimes people are just a little or can just be naturally skinny. And I think he's just naturally skinny. So like even if he like bulks up and like, I don't think he's ever going to look like thick. Does that make sense? So I think he's good enough size.
Maybe Justin Herbert would be a better comparison. When he's filled out, what do you think about Justin Herbert in the NFL? As a comparison, I mean, probably a slightly better runner. Herbert's been hurt.
I'm thinking a better runner. I could see that. I could maybe go with, I mean, they're both 6'6", so
give me a better one. While you pull up and you're not going to believe the stat of the day, but while you pull up our good friends at Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. So go ahead and you guys in the message board, if you don't mind, what pro quarterback does Nico remind you of? Because I don't think Herbert's that great either. Oh, well, I don't think that's that great of a comparison. I actually high on him when he's healthy. Getting back to Work Trucks, the perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is all about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks with an X supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know about Work Trucks with an X, and that's right. Work Trucks with an X. Downtown Birmingham, Clinton Highway in Knoxville. Go to Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. You got to figure it out. WorkTrucksLLC.com. They have and will make sure that you have the perfect vehicle that you have to have. They'll even find a perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Update on our poll question. Does Nico Iamaleava still look too frail? 42% say yes, 58% say no. Just maybe that might be a topic that we'll dive in tomorrow too.
Well, speaking of quarterbacks and frailness and getting hits, I just want to give some breaking news right now. And I'm only saying this because I feel no sympathy for him whatsoever, given what he did. But Brett Favre is testifying to Congress today for the welfare money he stole. And he reveals up front that he has Parkinson's disease, and which is an awful disease, but I love how he waited till right now to reveal it. Okay, sure, Brett.
Okay, that's a big downer. Nevertheless,
he accidentally stole the welfare money with his Parkinson's. It forced him to steal the welfare money.
New poll question. Does Brett? No, we're not going to ask that. And I also do want to remind people of Hook's Hangouts. One is Asia Cafe. They have the 6-to-1 Brazilian Cocoa Energy Booster Premix Instant White Coffee. It's awesome. You got to check it out. And asiacafe.org is where you need to go. I ate there last night. It is phenomenal. And you can check out their many locations right there. It's time to last look, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. We saved the best for last, and you're not going to believe this stat of the day.
To visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com. Simply the best.
Look at me. LASIK, no contacts, no glasses. Caleb, I can see clearly that you have a fantastic stat of the day.
Yes. The last time Tennessee beat, so they beat Oklahoma, obviously, in Athens, and I can't even talk right now. Listen to me. They beat Oklahoma in Norman. Then they beat Georgia in Athens in 2006, was their last one over a ranked team on the road. The last time Tennessee was
top 15,
yes. The last time Tennessee was undefeated and beat an undefeated top 15 team on the road was.
What game had Georgia lost that year?
No, Tennessee had already lost.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know. It seems difficult.
1998, Tennessee was undefeated and beat number 5 Georgia 22-3 on the road.
Pretty good.
And that
Say that again. That's really, really good, Caleb.
The last time Tennessee was undefeated and beat an undefeated top 15 team on the road. Actually, I can go further. The last time they were undefeated and beat an undefeated ranked team on the road was Georgia in 1998. They also were undefeated and beat an undefeated ranked Syracuse on the road that year because Syracuse was 0-0 and it was the opener for both teams. So, yeah, 98, Georgia. And that was the week, for those who don't remember, the week before Tennessee had scored an ugly, hideous win at Auburn. And then Jamal Lewis goes down with a season-ending injury. And I feel like a lot of people had just written Tennessee off at that point. They were actually underdogs in that game against Georgia. And they won 22-3.
Wow, Derek wins. Derek, on our message board, I asked who Nico reminds you of. And yes, Herbert's 236. So I kind of went back from Josh Allen of the Bills. But Derek wins. Randall Cunningham. And that's a little bit before your time, Caleb. But he was the first running quarterback. And here was why he, in my opinion, it wasn't the race issue, which heard a lot of other black quarterbacks previously. What it was a coaching issue. His buddy Ryan basically wanted to put together an incredible defense and never coached Randall Cunningham. He basically told him, make 5 plays a game and we'll win because the defense is so good. So he was raw and into his 8th year. I mean, and this is before free agency where you could go somewhere else that would develop you. But yes, walking into the NFL, Derek, good job. I mean, that's a fantastic comparison. Wow. What do you think? Do you remember Randall Cunningham much at all?
No, it was a little bit before me. I remember him that year was it the Vikings when during Randy Moss's rookie year?
Right. And then he became a good passer. He went to Vegas to it was like lay bricks or something. Like he had a bricklaying company or a foundation company or something. And they called him and they actually gave him some coaching and he was a good passer.
Well, he also had Randy Moss. Do you realize who Randy Moss made look good in his career?
Well, yes, Nathaniel, you're right. Nico will have way better numbers, but I think that's a very good comparison. Because he wasn't coached at all. I mean, if you go to the wrong NFL, if Nico or I like Bryce Young a lot, but he went to the wrong franchise.
Yes, hence the reason the Mannings. I never blamed Eli Manning once for forcing his way out of San Diego. I never blamed John Elway for refusing to go to the Colts. At that time, the Colts were not a good franchise. I don't blame quarterbacks for refusing to go get drafted by teams that they know will sabotage their careers.
Yeah.
Stay away from the Bears. Every quarterback, stay away from the Bears. Don't go get drafted by the Bears.
I don't have a problem with that. I want to thank everybody that's been a part of our just exploding numbers. On your way out the door, please hit the like button. Please be subscribed if you haven't already. And we would love for you to be a member of Hooker's Corner. And if you're a member of Hooker's Corner, guys, even just a free member, and I'm going to put it up right now, you can go ahead and scan that QR code, be a free member of Hooker's Corner, and you'll be eligible for those fantastic prizes, the monthly prizes like the Pick 6 glossy photos of Tennessee's defensive backs. That's what we'll give away later this week. Great monthly prizes, weekly prizes as well. We'll give away both later this week. Or that's just $9.98. And we've got a new post on Tennessee football recruiting, better interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. But if you want to be a free member, that's fine. You'll be eligible for Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. We're giving away a Garmin to anyone that's at least a free member and a subscriber of this channel. So there's your QR code. Do what you wish. It's just $9.98, but our ramped up recruiting coverage has already started. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. This has been a